Alright, so here we're going to be talking about the RAM and the M4 inside of Warzone. So, there's a few reasons why I think the RAM is better, and this is going to be one of them, the recoil. For this, the test methodology will be go up to this wall, turn around, and using the minimap at the top, make sure that you're perpendicular to the bus. I use the red line there in the background, and then also make sure to line up the crosshair right on the bottom. Alright, so that there was the M4. Now we're going to do the RAM, line it up at the bottom. Alright, now let's check these out. So you can see with the recoil pattern how the RAM has a bit less bounciness than the M4. Now, if you take a look at the loadouts, you'll see this here is what I would argue the best Warzone class. Once again, the best Warzone class, making sure to have a 50 rounder just for the consistency's sake. Make sure these are both 50 rounds. And I found that if it's 60 from that spot, it can go off, making that data invalid. But yes, once again, looking at this, you can see there's big bounce. There's also a big bounce right here. Though the side-to-side bounce is greater for the M4. It's almost like a stair-stepping pattern here. Boop, 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 boop. Whereas this is much more line-like. You can see how much tighter they all are in the M4. Alright. Now, I've done this multiple tests. Same pattern every single time. The next portion is the visual recoil. Visual recoil is huge, and this is the biggest reason why I didn't like the M4, even though so many people praise it for its great range and capabilities. Now, take a look at how much the scope bounces. All that bouncing around. When I pull out the RAM, you'll see that it's much less bounce, much more controlled. It just looks much better than the M4. Let's do that again real quick. All that bounce, bounce, bounce. And then RAM, much tighter altogether. And that lines up with this, where it shows this is nice and tight, whereas this is much more bouncy. Which is rather weird, I think, considering that the RAM has a faster fire rate than the M4, but hey. Alright, now let's go into the part 2. Alright, gonna be running through this. I've recorded it a couple times before, but they're all too long, so I'm gonna try and speed this one up. Earlier, we just saw how much better of a recoil plot the RAM 7 had than the M4, and we're going to be using that in addition to this to just show how the RAM 7 is kind of the better option. At close range, you're going to go and beat out the M4 by 30 milliseconds. Not anything to just scoff at. 30 milliseconds is a couple of frames at 60 FPS. Where it really gets huge is in the longer ranges, past 40 meters, which is pretty common in Warzone. The difference between the TTK of the RAM and the M4, if all shots are hit, is 120 milliseconds, which is huge, absolutely huge. When compared to the max time to kill is like 0.85, and you're reducing it by 0.12, that's pretty huge. But not only is the TTK faster, as shown earlier, the recoil is much, much less bouncy. You don't get the bounce that you get with the M4, and it really makes it much easier to hit those shots. I would argue that you're going to miss a larger portion of shots on the M4 than the RAM, purely because of that. In addition to this having a lower TTK, I think the RAM just demolishes the M4 at range and still crushes it in the close range. We'll see a little bit more why that's the case, but this is the part where I gotta give the M4 some love. M4 has a larger mag and a faster reload. You can see here the reload time, 0.2 seconds difference between the two. Nothing to scoff at. It's 10% different, but it's I think very manageable. Very, very manageable, especially if you have cover. And the mag size being 60 versus 50 does come into play sometimes, but once again, I think it's very manageable and is not nearly as big of a deal breaker as many people think that it is. I've seen this as like the main reason why people don't like the Rams, because they can't shoot as many bullets. But if you're hitting your shots, you should be downing people super quickly, and that should allow you to have a chance to reload. I mean, it's going to be a little bit slower in that department, but other things that really make up for it. One of them being in the rate of fire and how that affects flinch. Faster rate of fire means more bullets on them, more flinch. More flinch on them means that it's harder for them to aim. Nice and simple. ADS time. Difference between the stock Grenadier barrel and the longest Ram 7 barrel is approximately 35 milliseconds. So I think that's pretty big. That's a couple of frames at 60 FPS in addition to this right here. You get 65 milliseconds difference between the Ram 7 at close range and the M4 at close range. Not even a competition at that point. 65 milliseconds in your favor. Huge. Now the next thing is going to be taking a look at this. Sprint to fire, tactical sprint to fire, all going to be the same. Move speed, pretty big difference here. 0.1 meters per second. The biggest one being the ADS move speed. When you're strafing in a gunfight, this is what really matters. A 0.27 meters per second, approximately 15% ADS move speed difference is, pretty big. I mean, I would definitely like that. 15% faster ADS move speed. Yes, please. Now here's the vertical recoil and horizontal bounce of the ones that were tested just earlier that you saw. And that'll be useful later. Hipfire area, the same. Eck. Bullet velocity ever so slightly in favor of the Ram. Doesn't really matter, I don't think. Anything past 800, 900 doesn't matter for ARs. Only matters for snipers. Of course, reload and mag size favor M4. The only thing that the M4 has going for it is this. Now, another great thing about the Ram is better customization with the barrels. You only have like one other option with the M4 barrels, and it doesn't really change it that much. You kind of get everything is almost the same, except for ADS time, which brings it in line with the Ram. 6 milliseconds is one frame at 200 FPS. Not that much of a difference. But, I mean, hey, you can use your M4, has the same ADS time. There's only going to be a 30 millisecond? Yeah, 30 millisecond difference in time to kill at close range. So, while that's, going to bring them close together, the Ram 7 is still going to win the gunfight in the FSS Ranger versus the Corvus Custom Marksman barrel. But that also brings the move speed close together. ADS move speed still incredibly favors the Ram. You're going to lose out on recoil control though. That 5% recoil control means that it's going to bounce up more, going to be harder to control, but shouldn't be that bad. It's vertical recoil, very easy to control for most of the guns. Bullet velocity doesn't really matter, 8 meters per second, who cares? Now the big game changer is the Forged Tack Eclipse. This was not tested in the recoil control because it's kind of bouncy, or not bouncy, it's vertically much greater than these. So it didn't really feel like it was correct to compare them, especially because the ADS time difference between them is huge. 50 milliseconds means that this gun is in a completely different class than these guys. But this is the options that you have with the Ram 7. You can spec it out by only changing the barrel to be a much faster ADS and gun, shredding stuff up close, in addition to having not much horizontal bounce. And you'll see here that this, even when compared to the longest range M4, has a better TTK at range, and the difference between their drop-offs is 5 meters. It's possible for someone to be in there, but it's much more likely to be outside of that 5-meter range, and you're still going to shred someone because the horizontal bounce of the Ram 7 is not nearly as much as the M4. And in addition to that, you get a much better hip-fire accuracy. So this and the FSS Ranger barrel make the Ram 7 just a very compelling option when compared to the M4, with it winning or being even in everything except for reload time and mag size. But it wins in bullet velocity, horizontal bounce, vertical recoil is the same, ADS move speed faster, movement speed faster, these being the same, faster ADS, and a faster fire rate, meaning more flinch still. If you are thinking that you really like the M4, why would I run the Ram 7? This is why. It's just better overall gun, with the only real downside being the mag size and a slight reload time reduction, but it's much faster at range, faster at close quarters, and so try it out. I would like to finish this off by thanking True Game Data. His website's the only reason I'm able to show this to you. It's great. It's amazing. You should definitely be using it, and you should follow his YouTube channel. He has a YouTube channel by the same name. Highly recommend it. He does these great videos. Look at them, test them out, and thank you.